Good evening again. Thank you for coming. If everybody could find a way to a seat or wrap up conversations, I think we're ready to begin the more formal process for this evening. And to get things started, I'll turn it over to our council chair, Chair Darden Rice.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. This is our budget open house, and we really appreciate the time that you've taken out of your evening to be here. I hope you all noticed that we have our various departments who have our staff people, our information, our budget information, who are here available to answer your questions, as well as the presentations that we're giving today. And we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say and the questions that you have today. You have a 3-minute maximum to make your comments and your questions heard, and we're going to be listening very carefully, and then our council members, we're here, will give a response as well. So thank you. This is an important process, important public engagement for one of the most important things that we do here with the city, which is determining our yearly budget. And without further ado, I would like to introduce to you our mayor, Rick Kreisman.
Thank you, Darden, and good evening, everyone, and thank you to everyone who has come out here tonight. We are, as Darden said, we're looking forward to hearing from each and every one of you, not just tonight, but during the public council hearings on the budget, as well as online. We hope you will take advantage of anything that you may have thought about after you leave here and said, gosh, I wish I had mentioned that. Go online and let us know what your thoughts were. We're very proud of our last 3 budgets. We have been fiscally responsible in how we've spent your money, and in fact, Wallet Hub has rated us in the state of Florida the best run city for 2016, and number 48 in the country. And the Fiscal Times for 2016, which rates the city's fiscal strength, also rated St. Petersburg as number 1 in the state of Florida and number 23 in the country. But we've also tried to address our shared priorities. Our city is better and stronger than it was 3 years ago. Now, some of the credit for that is due to an improved economy. Some of the credit is due to the smart and dedicated staff that we have that guides our budget. And in particular, I'd like to thank Dr. Gary Cornwell, Deputy Mayor Tomlin, and especially my director, our budget director, Tom Green, and his entire team. Now, we haven't addressed every single priority as fully as we'd like every single year. Tough decisions are always having to be made. And that's where you all come in. We value your participation. We value your feedback. This is your money that eventually will be spent on your behalf. And so we want you to have a say in it, and that's what the purpose of tonight is. So finally, I want to reiterate my belief that budgets are really a moral document. To me, a budget, and this is something I've said even when I was in the legislature, a budget is an illustration of what your values are, what it is that you stand for. Now, a politician can talk a good game about creating opportunities or addressing youth violence, but if they're not putting their money where their mouth is, then really it's just lip service. And that's not what we're all about. We want every dollar that we spend to have meaning, and to travel down one of our 4 strategic pathways towards our vision. We set this vision of who we wanted to be as a city 4 years ago, a city of opportunity where the sun does shine on all who live, work, and play, that's innovative, creative, and competitive, that honors our past while we pursue our future. And as such, every budget decision we make is aimed at trying to achieve that vision of truly becoming that city of opportunity where the sun does shine on all who live, work, and play. So again, thank you all for coming out tonight, and we look forward to hearing from each of you. Thank you.
Okay, I promise this is the last time you'll hear from me this evening, because this is about hearing from you, as the mayor has indicated. But I did want to provide a little contextual framework for where we started on the FY18 budget development process and where we're going. And you see here, we've got a couple of little slides up here, or charts. The one on the left illustrates, and I know it's hard for you to see, but I will kind of hit some highlights, but that's our budget process. We started our budget process in our shop, the budget department, in December of 2016. We start planning for next year's budget. So at that time, we're simultaneously thinking about 3 different fiscal years, having just closed FY16 and council having just adopted the FY17 budget. We begin planning for the next year's budget. So it is a long gestation period, so to speak, for budget development, and it seems like we do it year round. So we start in December. In January, and we have our kickoff meetings with our departments where we provide some instruction on the CIP budget. Then in early February, we had our kickoff meeting with our operating departments and provided the instructions and how we wanted the budgets to be put together. And then in March, as the mayor had talked about, we sit down with every department and compare their budget to our values and to our vision, and make sure that the investments that we're advancing will meet our vision for the future and what we want our city to be. So we take that very seriously, and it's incorporated into our budget development process on an annual basis. So in March, we sit down with each department and evaluate all of their budgets and review them, compare them to previous year actual expenditures. You know, do we need to increase investment here? Do we need to reduce investment there? So we evaluate every department's budget at the line item level, and believe me, we take the entire month of March to do that process. Then in April and May, we visit with City Council in what we call our Committee of the Whole meetings. Basically, they're a workshop where we present the progress that we've made in the budget development to that point. And we get feedback from council, and then we incorporate their comments into the working document that is our budget. So that kind of gets us to where we are tonight in visiting with you. And we certainly are going to hear from everyone and anyone who wants to speak. But as the mayor pointed out, there is, if you don't want to get up and speak tonight, please go to our website, because you can leave your comments there as well. And then there are 2 public hearings in September where citizens are invited and welcome to come and share your thoughts on the budget. So from here, we will have to submit, Mayor Kreisman will have to submit his balanced budget recommendation to council on July 14th. And that's governed by our city ordinances and by state statutes. There are all kinds of compliance that we have to meet, and we have a process to meet all these required dates. Once the mayor submits his budget in July on the 15th or on 14th, because that's the Friday, we will then ask council to set a tentative millage rate on the next Thursday, which is July 20th this year. And then from there, there'll be the 2 public hearings in September. So we've come a long way, but we still got some distance to go before council ultimately adopts the budget in September, at the end of September. I think this year it's the 21st. And then that budget goes into effect on October 1 and will run from October 1 of 2017 until September 30 of 2018. And then we will again begin that process all over again, and it's an annual challenge that guided by our vision and values, certainly makes building an annual budget, I wouldn't say easier, but this is a guidepost for how we invest your resources on an annual basis. So with that as kind of an overview of our budget process, let me make sure I hit all the points I wanted to hit. I will encourage you to go to our website. Again, you can leave your comments there on the survey. We also have some information on accomplishments that we've completed with the Penny for Pinellas. So please take advantage of all that information that is on our website. And I hope that everyone had an opportunity to get around and visit with the mayor's senior management team, who is all in this room this evening. And I do want to thank my colleagues for coming out and for your participation tonight. This is truly a great management team, and I'm sure the mayor appreciates all the work that these men and women do on a daily basis to provide those services that we need. And so we're glad that you're here. And now, without further ado, we're turning it over to you. So, Mr. Clerk, if you could call the first couple of speakers, we'll get this show on the road, so to speak. Thanks again for coming.
Howard Johnston and Lucinda Johnston, you have 2 minutes each.
Thank you. Thank you. I never win anything. Getting to go first.
Hold on, Howard.
That it? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I never win anything, so getting to go first is really special. Great cities really do a good job of integrating their past and their dynamic future. And I'm here today to talk to you as a board member for the St. Petersburg Museum of History. We've really done an outstanding job, I think, of preserving some of our most venerable institutions and really working them into the really dynamic development of this city. And now I want you to consider making one of our oldest institutions, which is the museum, celebrating more than 100 years here, a vital part of the pier development. The St. Pete Museum of History is a world-class regional museum. We draw tourists, we draw school kids from all over the region, and residents to its really outstanding exhibits. Some of them are pretty whimsical. We have the largest collection of autographed baseballs in the world. We have the world's only two-headed calf with 6 legs. And others are much more serious, like fighting for the right to fight, the history of African American troops in World War II. So what I'm asking is that you consider using this museum as a welcome center and as a gateway to the pier development. We can arrange semi-permanent exhibits on the history of the pier. We can provide rotating exhibits on the marvelous history of different segments of the city. And best of all, it's already there. It's right at the gateway to the pier, as it has been for a century. It's a great chance, we think, to save money, enrich the pier experience for visitors and for residents alike, and to support one of the city's best assets, which is the St. Petersburg Museum of History. We think it's a really outstanding opportunity, and we'd really like to have the city consider it. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for having us here. I think this is a wonderful way for people to have a chance to say what they want to say to their elected officials. We didn't have this in Tampa, and I really appreciate some of the things that we do here in St. Petersburg to involve everyone in these processes. I read a lot of the budget. It's very detailed. I went to sleep while I was reading it. But one of the things that I noticed was that there were money being spent on the things that were important. And Mayor Kreisman hit the nail on the head when he said a budget is a moral document. I believe that. And our family budget is a moral document. And to that end, I would like, when all of you are looking at that budget, and I know you have to tweak it and move some things around and maybe even cut some things, but when you're looking at the bottom line, don't have that bottom line always be a financial bottom line, because there are bottom lines that we can't measure. The money we put into preschool, we don't know what the payoff from that money is until years later when that child graduates from high school. Sometimes we never know that. What's the most frustrating thing as a teacher in preschool was we never really knew what the outcome of all the time and money that we had spent on a child. But we always know that it's the right place to put our money. The other one that's very important to me is our environment. That's another where sometimes it's so much cheaper to do things the wrong way. Or not the wrong way, but the way that's not quite as environmentally, friendly and gonna make our world a little better and maybe even save our species and every other one. So when you're looking at those environmental issues, please consider clean air to be worth something. Please consider a child with asthma not having an asthma attack from the fumes from a diesel bus to be worth some money. And please consider just the value of having our beautiful waterfront belong to everyone. Thank you.
Lindsay Grove and Michael Melzi.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Grove, and I'm a young professional and small business owner here in St. Pete. I live in beautiful Roser Park. My husband and I purchased a house in Roser Park because we fell in love with the unique the unique spirit and culture of St. Pete and its people. And we love being able to walk downtown, but unfortunately there's still parts of St. Pete that are inaccessible and are dangerous for pedestrians. After completing a walk audit on 18th Avenue South, it was clear that while the center of St. Pete is on track to becoming pedestrian friendly, there are other parts of the city that need better infrastructure for walkers, bikers, and people using wheelchairs. I know that as a public health professional, I know that the built environment has a major impact on healthy behaviors, accessibility, and quality of life. Making St. Pete more walkable, accessible, and safer for pedestrians and people with disabilities not only improves public health, but it is a great selling point for young professionals like myself looking for hip, unique cities to move to and work in. Please consider funding Complete Streets and its associated projects in this budget because it truly impacts all St. Pete residents. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Michael Melzi. Okay, John Stewart and Tom Lally.
Hello, my name is John Stewart. I'm sorry I'm not that John Stewart, but nonetheless. I go to a small church here in St. Pete called Missio Dei. We're about 20 or 30 people, and about 2/3 of our congregation is homeless. It's a very sobering to take communion from someone or be next to someone who's going to be sleeping on the ground that night. We also have a dinner afterwards that we serve to our congregation. And last night, I sat down with the congregation, told them I was going to be here tonight, and I said, what would you like to say to the mayor and the city council? And I have some of their comments here. One that I really liked was turn the old YMCA into a homeless shelter, which I don't know if it's possible, but that brings me to my next issue, which is I'm also an art fan. I taught art history and general humanities at Osceola High School. I was in the public school system for 37 years, and I brought kids to St. Pete. We saw the museums, of course, but we also saw the churches, First Methodist with a stained glass window. We also went to the Byzantine church out by the library, and I love being in this city with all this art. It was a great place to teach art history, and if I had to pick an artist for teenagers, it would be Salvador Dali. Maybe number 2 would be Hieronymus Bosch, but Dali is perfect for teenagers, and I still get a thrill going up the double helix staircase. Now that I'm retired, I volunteer at the Dali, I work with teenagers there, and I'm also a fledgling docent at the Museum of Fine Arts. So I love being in this city of art, but in your budget, I also want you to think about the folks that I see every Sunday night who are going to go sleep under a bush somewhere, because I'm also passionate about clothing, feeding, and sheltering the least of these. And we can be a city of brilliant museums and decent housing, and that's what I would like you to do, to keep those balanced. We're moving in a great direction with the art. Let's also move in a great direction with with housing the homeless and feeding folks. And
Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Yes, I have these letters for you. With the picture of the congregation, there's one for you, and then as a representative of the city council, there you are. So you can look those over later. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Tom Lally. I've been a resident of St. Petersburg for 40 years. We all hear the benefits that public and private working together can bring to the city. One of the things I've thought about is within the next few years, the city is going to be losing in the neighborhood of 600 of their employees, mostly blue collar, that have special talents that we really need to keep the city and have the city that we enjoy to live in so much. So my suggestion is, what's the possibility of the city, those workers that are aging out, and groups like PTEC work together to actually have the folks that are aging out train these new young men and women for the jobs that we need so dearly. And that's it. Thank you for your time.
Michael Jr. and Lisa Frank.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Michael Jr. I'm here tonight representing the sanitation department employees in the union on a budget item that has greatly impacted employee morale. I'm addressing the value of the Drive Cam program and whether or not it is working. Briefly, the Drive Cam program is the introduction of surveillance technology, which includes a camera on the front windshield of the vehicles, with one side of the camera pointing at the drivers and the other pointing at what's going on in front of the vehicle. This is the first time this has ever been attempted within the city, and we, the employees, are not comfortable with the fact that we may be setting the precedent for further surveillance of workers citywide. Knowing that this is a budget hearing, we want to address the fiscal impact, and in the package that you were provided, there is some more information, but some of the statistics are that in the 12 months now, in the year that we've had these cameras, during the first 4 months, there were 15 or an average of 3.75 preventable accidents per month. And for the next 8, there were 27 for an average of 3.37 per month. That's an improvement of just 38 hundredths of an accident. The question we're asking is this worth $200,000 of taxpayer money? And we believe not. We feel that it would be more cost efficient if the city would regularly institute consistent and regular safety training programs. The one thing that we know for certain can prevent accidents and promotes better safety practices for not only the residents and for the employees is investment in safety and training programs for us, the employees, who gladly serve the city every day. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Lisa Frank. I'm a campaign organizer with the Florida Consumer Action Network. I've had the pleasure of working with you all, leaders throughout this community, residents, and your staff on the Complete Streets Plan. I want you all for a second here to imagine a street, very wide street with fast-moving traffic, something like 34th, street where the sidewalk may be cracked or in disrepair. That kind of street is not the kind of street where you'd want to take a casual stroll or let your child cross to go to school. It's not a street that an older or disabled person would feel safe traveling on, or one where many people would feel comfortable riding a bike. It's a street that could make you think of pollution stinging your eyes and lungs and noise jangling your nerves. But we can also imagine a different kind of street, one that we also have here in St. Pete. Streets where cars move a little more slowly, where there are wide sidewalks and safe places to cross, where cars and bikes don't have to fight for space because the street was actually designed to accommodate both of them. This is a kind of street that would invite you on that evening stroll, that would invite your child to walk to school or to take a bike ride. That's a street where the air is a little cleaner, the sounds are a little quieter, and day-to-day life is much more pleasant. And that's really the whole idea behind Complete Streets. They're streets designed for everyone, whether young or old, able-bodied or using a wheelchair, traveling by car, bus, on foot, on bicycle. And we know that changing the design of our streets to reduce speeding, to improve the sidewalks, or to provide physically protected bike lanes can improve public health and safety for everyone in this city by encouraging people to be more active, reducing air pollution, and lessening the number and severity of motor vehicle crashes. Our conversations about Complete Streets with leaders throughout this community have gone far beyond transportation to look at economic development on 18th Avenue South in the Skyway Marina District, looking at helping people in Kenwood and Fossil Park and every other neighborhood stay in their homes as they age because the sidewalks are accessible. So as you prepare this next year's budget, I want you to be thinking about the most that we can possibly do to achieve these goals of a healthy, a safe, and a connected city for everyone through Complete Streets. Thank you.
Beth Connor and Janet Michelle.
Good evening. My name is Beth Connor, and always first I have gratitude for the city administration and council for allowing the public to have this say, and for having, I'd say, the big cheeses here from every department to allow us to see them face to face and give our input without having to try to find the phone number or email, and have them try to get back and see exactly what our wishes are. There isn't any comment that has been said so far that I disagree with. I am really pleased with the budgeting that's going forward, and especially what the mayor said at the beginning, that we are budgeting with a vision to our values, and I think that speaks more than the bottom line of how many commas there are and what the numbers are, because I feel that the issues that we face and how we address them are investments in our future. They're not expenditures, they're not things that are over thought of, or what I'm trying to get at is I hear arguments of too much money was spent on this or it was spent on that. And I think the second speaker hit the nail on the head when she said some things cannot be tangibly quantified. When the investments the city is making to make us independent with green energy has more forethought than I believe almost any city in the United States. And this is important because sustainability is a large word, but I want to break it down to cheaper utility bills, smaller power bills. That's what we're moving towards, and keep doing the right thing. Thank you.
How's everybody doing? My name is Janet, and I'm just a regular concerned citizen. I'm here because I see the work that the city is doing, particularly in downtown. It's pretty, it's nice, I frequent it a lot. I spend my money down there, but my issue is the rest of the city. These roads, they're raggedy. You guys have the time, the money, and the resources and the manpower to make downtown look absolutely beautiful. I'm a homeowner. The taxes, when I pay my mortgage, I can't control when they take it out. It just comes out. But I get tired of riding down 9th Street in particularly, north and south. It's raggedy. You got potholes, the paint is disappearing, the turn lanes, they're not clear. You have areas that are not clearly marked out for pedestrians. Just saw a pedestrian or bicyclists get hit this morning on 34th Street South. So, I mean, the work is good. It is good for the city. It's a good look, but you guys need to, really just continue to put the money where your mouth is and make the rest of the city look good too, because we contribute, our dollars go to the entire city, so the entire city deserves to look nice, and we deserve to have good roads to ride on, because alignments aren't cheap, and it's just hard at night too traveling when the roads are just not safe because it's not clearly marked out, especially with our rainy season that we're in now. It's just not good. So continue doing what you're doing, but continue to put your money where your mouth is, and let's fix the roads everywhere for everybody, not just downtown. Thank you.
Larry Newsom and Denise Deja.
Good evening. Every 4 years, the residents of Midtown wait to hear what the new administration's plan is for Midtown. Unfortunately, for most of the last 40 years, there was either no plan or a weak incremental plan that did not make a difference in any significant way in the lives of the people in Midtown. Well, a group of concerned citizens in Midtown decided that they wanted to work on their own plan. So we would work on the plan to figure out what the community needed and then tell the city what we wanted. And what we decided was that the community wanted a transformative plan, not an incremental plan that works, that hasn't worked over the last 40 years, but an incremental plan over the next 10 years that would give Midtown a chance to be a part of the city like every other part of the city. We're beginning this effort out in the community, and we'll be discussing it in detail with elected officials at the appropriate time. The mayor said that the budget is a moral document, and we believe that the city does have a moral responsibility to begin working on the difficult tasks that have been sort of given short shrift over the years and pushed aside and pushed under the table. It is just time for Midtown to get a better deal than it has been, and we think that it's very possible for the city and the residents of Midtown to come together and create a transformative plan that can make a difference in Midtown. We're just not interested in small incremental plans that don't move the needle anymore. Thank you.
Good evening, Denise Deja. Thank you guys for having this forum. Really appreciate it. I am an advocate for affordable housing. I was going to talk about infrastructure, but I think we got that one covered. I walk all over. I don't have a car, and so the city streets and sidewalks are a big issue for me, but affordable housing is also a very important issue for me. It's very close to my heart. As with the other gentleman, many of our homes are getting, or our residents are getting pushed out of their homes. Higher and higher rents, developers coming in and taking over, moving people out of the city that can no longer afford to live here. It's becoming way out of control. And I think something needs to be done, whether it's an inclusionary zoning ordinance or other types of ordinances that can control how developers come in and charge for rents when they build their buildings, or rent control, something like that. Anything that can help to keep some of our people in their homes and help with the homeless situation as well. Get people into homes that are out on the street, because there's way too many of them out there. And we can't criminalize them anymore. We need to help them get into homes. Not everybody's drunk. There's a lot of families with children out there. So I'm on a fixed budget myself, and I'm just barely hanging on to what I have. I live a few blocks from here. I'm lucky for that. Thank you very much.
Brother John Muhammad and Rick Smith.
Good evening. So for the last 6 years, the People's Budget Review has surveyed citizens through St. Petersburg about their priorities on the budget. To anyone that's paying attention, it's easy to see that we can no longer count on the federal and state government to advance economic, environmental, and social justice. It's all up to the cities now, and the cities have to fill the gaps and actually serve the people. With that in mind, we're calling for a new deal for St. Pete. And when we say new deal, we mean that in the same sense that it was used back in the day when the government was obligated to work for all people, not just a few. Economic development plans have been in effect for 50 years, yet poverty is still persistent. As Mr. Newsom mentioned, it's obvious that incremental change hasn't moved the ball down the field for the majority of people in this city, and so we echo his sentiment and the sentiment of the community for a transformational change. We need to figure out a way to have substantive economic development without displacing the residents that live in neighborhoods through what we call gentrification. There are many gifted people throughout the city, and a lot of the solutions can be developed from the inside out. So we need to also look at trying alternative ways to economic development that builds communities' wealth, such as community and worker-owned cooperatives. We also need a new deal for St. Pete when it comes to education. We can no longer sit back and watch our public schools deteriorate, and we can no longer say that it's not the city's responsibility. We're asking that the city support the trades and no longer continue as a community to spread the myth that everyone can and should go to college. We need to think more broadly about our involvement in early childhood education and how we support those that are coming out of the trade schools and into the workforce. Our median household income is below the national average, wages are low, and again, poverty is high. So even though we're seeing a decrease in poverty, we want to make sure that it's because people that are born and raised here are actually making more money and not because there are people that have money that are coming into the city and it just looks good on paper. We need to do all that we can to stay within 2 minutes. So we'll pass out a document at the end. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rick Smith. Good evening. There certainly is a different flavor kind of to the People's Budget Review this year, and it's mostly because times are radically different. This year is way different than last, maybe the most different in our memories, with the federal government and the state government that threatens to cut every type of safety net for citizens of this country, from schools to healthcare to housing to transportation, as well as gutting our environmental protections. All of this directly impacts the city. That's what people are feeling right now. It's also different in the issues that people prioritize. We've been doing this a long time. By far, the biggest issue, by far, beating everything, is the issue of education. And that cut across all neighborhoods and demographics. Hard to tell what people mean, but we asked and checked, and it came down to two things. One, the need for technical and vocational educational programs with the capacity to take in all who need it, and two, preschool education / childcare and mentoring programs. Now, the first action we recommend came directly from conversations with the senior consultant for capacity building at Pinellas Technical College. When I asked what was the single most important thing the city could be doing to build up the capacity of vocational and technical education, he said, the mayor should convene a conference between the city, light industrial and manufacturing businesses, urban agricultural proponents, green job creators, unions, and community groups at the Pinellas Technical College to coordinate workplace development, succession, and apprenticeship programs. Sounds like an idea. And this is kind of what we've been stressing. It isn't about the dollar here, the dollar there. It's about transformational thinking. How do we do this? There's no argument here, but that's something that could be easily done. The other idea is to think of how to use current community wealth to design and employ early education / childcare and mentorship programs.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Use the assets that are already available to the city, rec centers, libraries, etc. Figure that out. That's where we're standing on education, big issue.
Matthias Bird and Philip Garrett.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Dr. Tomlinson, City Council. I don't have much for the city. I want to talk about Midtown, and I was pretty pleased when I walked in the room. I said, Southside is in the building, until I found out it was the sanitation department. So I would like to give a shout out to that strong show of unity to the sanitation department. I would also like to piggyback on what Mr. Newsom said. 40 years in Midtown and no progress. Small increments. The reason why we have small increments, we have a small voice. Look at the room, tiny voice, no voice. It is our responsibility to make sure that we get things on the budget that are tangible, realistic, moving parts that can happen. And that's not gonna come from up top, that's gonna come from the people. So if we want real change And we don't want to go another 40 years waiting and going through cycle after cycle with people parading through our community saying what they're going to do. We need to get together, show some unity. If the sanitation department can unify about cameras, we should be able to unify around schools that are called failure factories. We should be able to unify when Walmart pulls out, we're in a food desert. Come on, guys. It's our responsibility. Thank you for having us. This is not the first forum that they had. We need to show up in numbers, and we need to stop allowing a few people to call themselves our leaders. We need to stand up as a community and unify and get some tangible issues on the table and move forward. Thank you. Under 2 minutes.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Philip Garrett. I'm a city owner by percentage, along with everyone else that's here. I want to thank you and thank the administration for all your efforts this year and for the past 4 years, 3 years. You have been listening and you have been making efforts to make a difference. And I appreciate that 100%. Last year, I was supported by 14,000 voters who agreed with me that the city sewer issues and problems that we've had should be and need to be addressed. And I agree that you have made efforts, and I encourage you to continue to make those efforts. Put more funding. If Public Works is geared to have 10 million in expenditures, increase it to 12. That's all I ask, is to continue to make efforts to make the sewer system a little bit better than it is. In addition to that, I also like to encourage you guys to, as many have spoken about early childhood education and the problems that we're having at school, I firmly believe, and 14,000 other voters believed in November, that early childhood education is imperative to focus on. If we can increase the success rate of 1 to 5 year olds now, 5 to 10 years from later, we'll see a new child, a new people, a new worker, a new city. So let's focus on making efforts or increasing our efforts and supporting the school system as well as parents. Me as a parent, I have to pay $700 for 8 weeks of summer camp. I am advocating for free summer camp for all students. Let's increase that over a 5-year period. Each year, let's get better and increase the funding to make sure that every child is not left behind during the summer. In addition to that,
thank you, Mr. Garrett.
I want to thank you, and my name is Philip Garrett, and I wish to speak to all of you in the very, very near future. I have a lot of ideas for my district and my people. Thank you.
Kevin Jackson and Laura O'Daney. Kevin Jackson and Laura O'Daney.
Good evening. How y'all doing this evening? It's been a while. How y'all doing? Okay, I want to talk about Make St. Peter a Living Wage City. Too often we get a very skewed vision of what this city is and who lives here. Our median household income is around $48,000, which is well below the national average. Household income counts the income of all who are working, so when half the people in St. Pete have an income below $48,000, we're talking about half the people in the city struggling to hang on. You can paint a great picture about who we are, but the economic facts are that we're a working class city. 33% of the city makes less than $15 an hour, and $15 an hour is only a start to get it to a livable wage for St. Pete workers and families. Now, you guys have been good and need to continue pursuing an ordinance moving to the $15 an hour over a short period for contractors, temporary employees, and city part-timers with less than 5 years. And we want to thank you for that. There are other ways to ensure fair wages, with many examples around the country of community benefits agreements within the city for all contractors with between community organizations and developers around wages and services to be provided to the community in question. And in the end of this, I want to say also we need restorative justice for all and need to continue the work to ban the box on all city employment. Thank you.
Good evening. I wanted to say that I'm delighted to have moved here not long after the creation of the Office of Sustainability. I'm delighted that St. Petersburg is thinking about that. I moved here from Washington, D.C., where there is a whole Department of the Environment for the District of Columbia, so I would strongly encourage the city to consider increasing the staffing of the Office of Sustainability and the work that's being done. Sharon Wright, we're so fortunate to have her. She must be doing the work of at least 5 people, so I hope we can hire some more people to support her in those efforts. I also know that some of the BP and other city money has been put into assessments and research and thinking about these things, and I hope we can get some money into executing this. I think in terms of return on investment, sustainability is one of the best areas for a city to spend its money. Also, in terms of resilience and thinking about the rising sea levels and just in terms of making St. Petersburg a more resilient city, I also think the Office of Sustainability is a key actor in that, so let's get more funding there to support that. Also, I'd like to say, tangentially but related, more coming from DC, I'm all about public transportation, so the more we can do to make St. Petersburg walkable, bikeable, better public transport, help those of us residents who would like to reduce our car dependency be able to do that. Let us be outdoors more active, more connected with our neighbors by being on the streets and not inside our vehicles. And lastly, I'd like to beat that early childhood education drum. When I was in DC, I worked on early childhood education policy. Again, return on investment. On the conservative side, research shows that for every dollar invested, the return is at least $7.
I know Mr. Melzi is here. Michael Melzi and Christopher T. Did you want to speak, Mr. Melzi? You filled out a card. No? Christopher T. and Maria Jose Chapa.
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having this. I remember when you used to have 3. That was a lot cooler, but whatever. You know, a lot of folks here are talking about a lot of important and awesome things, from neighborhood development to early childhood. But something we haven't really talked about is the epidemic with the stolen cars. You know, it's a huge problem. There's stories weekly on the Police Blotter and in the Times, and I'm sure other publications as well. One of the things that the New Deal folks have brought forward with the People's Budget Review is this emphasis on wanting to work with rec centers. If we were to look at a program that currently exists, and the name of it escapes me, I'm not sure how it's funded, there's a partnership with the Bull Lake Center working to do, you know, the type of stuff that kids who might be stealing cars could do if given the opportunity to, if it was promoted a little better. For instance, I think it might be good to look at making, you know, an inroads with private business. I work for a small property management franchise corporation. We have several offices in Pinellas County in the Bay Area. We would love to have an opportunity where students or maybe, you know, college kids or kids that didn't even have that opportunity to attend college to come and, you know, learn from us. We'd love that. By the same token, I'm sure you guys would like to have students or, you know, maybe adults or, you know, even retirees come and see what it is you do in City Hall. It'd be awesome. And in addition to that, you guys have a program now that you call the N Team, which you might consider renaming, that concentrates on neighborhood beautification. If folks buy into their neighborhood and beautify it and they have something that they've worked for, they might not tear it up as much. You guys could consider giving some money to that. I'd appreciate it. I think everyone would appreciate it. It might be a nice idea. Thank you for your time.
wasn't going to speak, but I couldn't help myself. So I'm a resident of this beautiful city. I've lived here for about 4 years, and I think one of the things that we really need to think about for 2018 is definitely infrastructure. You know, our roadways are falling apart. One of the ladies that spoke reminded me of the fact that we have a lot of potholes on the street that I drive by, and I actually live right where they built that new volleyball court. There's so many, you know, the baseball field, Woodlawn, on 19th Street, the police athletic, that whole area there. We get a lot of activity. There's a lot of people that drive through those roads, and we have, excuse me, I lost my voice, but I'm getting it back. So we have a lot of potholes, and there's definitely a need to improve our roadways. If there's a way for the city manager, or whoever it is, to assess the conditions of our roadways, of our sidewalks, we definitely need to pour money into our infrastructure, because we are getting more people moving into the city because they love this city, and clearly the residents that live here love their city, and that's why they want to remain here. One of the things too that's happening is there's a lot of displacement. You're losing a lot of your artists who have drawn the appeal of people to come here. Like Derek Donnelly, for example, doesn't live here anymore. He can't afford it. Now he's in Pinellas Park. You're going to lose a lot of your talent to Pinellas Park and to other areas because there are no rental caps. They can't afford to stay here. They can't afford studio space. So those are things to consider. And like we're reiterating through our surveys and PBR, if the median income is, you know, under 50,000, but yet you're building literally a playground for tourists or for people who aren't invested but just come and play and leave, where does that leave us residents who want to stay here, who have families? So community benefits agreements, look into the Cleveland model in Cincinnati. Yeah, look into those things, please. Thank you.
The last two cards, Talmadge, Andrews, and Jim Jackson.
Oh, hi. How y'all doing? I wasn't going to speak at all. I wasn't going to even make any noise in the building tonight. But when sanitation department came up and said that you've spent $200,000 on cameras on the truck, and I had just got to talking with the police department about cameras, body cameras, and cameras in their cars, and there's no movement on it. Your priorities are a little mixed. And I would believe that you spend more on the police department and getting those cameras in service than you do on the sanitation trucks, because those people are doing a minimal job of keeping our city clean and safe, but the police department is there to protect and serve. So we need them there more with body cameras and cameras in their cars. Thank you.
Good evening, my friends and Mayor, Deputy Mayor. Just a couple of things. You know that I'm walking a lot of neighborhoods these days, knocking on a lot of doors. One thing I see are a lot of elderly people that don't get out of their homes whatsoever. And I'm talking people my mom's age, 94, 95, 96. We know how old they are when we come up to the door. Some of them maybe don't want to come out, but I guess I look like a really honest person. They need more than they're getting. Their home is a wreck. I have fallen several times up and down their stairs, but I fall a lot anyhow. But they need some assistance in terms of mobility. They no doubt need some assistance in terms of nutrition. Some of them certainly have sight difficulties. So I don't think the city is doing enough on outreach for those who are 65, but much older. We have people living alone who are in their mid-90s and up. And you talk to the neighbors about the person next door, and they say, we just don't ever see her. We don't ever see them, but we know they're there. Well, they don't never come out of their house. So if we can just Knock on their door, make sure they're okay. The city loves you. We are here. We can help you.
There are no more speakers.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Ed Montanari. I've been on City Council for about a year and a half. I represent District 3, which is Northeast St. Petersburg. And first of all, I want to thank everybody that came out. It's important for us to hear from you, and it's an amazing exercise to hear the priorities from the people that live in our great city. So I want to thank you for coming out and sharing your evening with us. And I also want to thank our city staff. We are very well served here in St. Petersburg, and we don't say thank you enough for the great people that run the city for us, and we're very blessed to have them here. I came here tonight to listen and learn, and I learned some things. I took some notes on some of the priorities, and the priorities that I see with our budget include the first priority of city government is funding public safety. And we're very thankful for our police department, fire department, and EMS, and that takes up pretty much just the police department itself takes up most of our ad valorem revenue, but public safety is job number one. The other thing that's a big priority for me is making sure our reserves are adequately funded, and we're doing that. I'd like to do that in a bigger way. And then the other thing that I want to focus on, and some people spoke about it, and that's a vision for the future. St. Petersburg went through an exercise called Vision 2020, and I think it's time, and City Council has started to have some conversations about maybe it's time to do a Vision 2050 type of a plan for our community. And we had people talking about a more robust plan for different parts of the city, especially Midtown, but I think we need to start looking at plans for the entire city and where we want to be 2050 and beyond. So thank you all for coming out tonight, and I'll pass it off to Councilman Carl Nurse.
I just wanted to start by mentioning the sewers, and the bad news is that the deferred maintenance that you see in sewers is not just the sewers. The potholes that you're talking about, that's actually sewers that are collapsing underneath. Frankly, the city underinvested in infrastructure for decades, and we are now trying to dig our way out of this. It's going to be a long project, and it runs from sewers to seawalls to bridges. It's a very wide spectrum of things. But while we're doing that, we are trying, and we've made several steps, but I think there's more to go. That we need to try to find ways of how can we, when we spend city money, how do we leverage that so it positively impacts our community? Some of that is increasing the city minimum wage for city workers. We've just recently changed it so that if you have a contract with the city, we're upping the minimum wage on that, so that when we indirectly hire people, we create good jobs. But there's plenty of work to do. It is the most frustrating, candidly, is schools, because we have modest ability to impact that. We are trying to do some things on pre-K, but if I could snap my fingers, I would quadruple what we spend on pre-K, and I think the payback would be dramatic. But there's plenty of work to do, and on a smaller note, there are two things that are currently not funded that I would like to get. One, we have a 6-month backlog on repairing sidewalks. For a couple $100,000, we can erase that backlog. And then the other is that we reduced funding for rebates for rehabs in the coming budget, and in fact, we need to see if we can restore that funding. So, thank you for everybody for coming out. Frankly, the suggestions people make are wonderful. It's just going to be a challenge of how can we piece it together. Thank you.
Well, good evening. Carl actually hit on some of the points I wanted to hit on. I've been talking to neighborhood associations saying that the sewers were actually the canary in the coal mine, right? So infrastructure issues are not just related to the sewers. As you all shared with us, we have a lot of challenges ahead of us, whether it's roadways or sidewalks, seawalls, that kind of thing. So infrastructure is definitely going to have to be a focus, but I really see that as an opportunity. As Carl already mentioned, we have ways that we can invest our money that makes a difference in our community. And we can also do that in a sustainable way as we look to grow for the future. So that's certainly something that we're going to have to pay a lot of attention to in the future years. The two issues that I spend the majority of my time on council on have to do with youth and taking care of our most vulnerable populations. And so we have heard over the last couple of years kind of this rising boil about a rising tide should lift all boats. And clearly that progress and prosperity that we see happening in our city, which is great, isn't happening for everybody, and we have to pay attention to that. We have 4,000 homeless children in our county, and if we aren't ashamed of that, we should be. So I'm really proud that last year, working with administration, we were able to secure $2 million for rapid rehousing programs along with the county. That isn't a one-year investment. We're going to have to continue investing in that area. You might have seen an article in the paper this weekend about there is no family shelter, so I'm working in collaboration with the county to find a way to piece together some different funding for that. But the other issue as it relates to that is affordability of the housing that we have, right? We can invest all of the money we have in housing the homeless, but if there is nowhere for them to go and to live sustainably, then our investments aren't going to matter. And so we have to get serious about how we address affordable housing. This council and administration has recently set aside penny for Pinellas dollars for some additional affordable housing. The county is doing that as well, but it's not going to be enough. And every month, sometimes twice a month, at our housing committee, we are looking at various tools to add to our toolbox because one thing is not going to be the answer. And then as it relates to youth, I'm not surprised at all that this is the issue that parents and our citizens are raising, that education matters the most to them. And so we're going to have to continue to focus on that, increasing early childhood efforts. Our Second Chance program has been successful, but we have some opportunity. Somebody brought up the idea of helping make sure we train folks because college isn't the only path for many people. So those are big buckets. We have a lot of work to do. We've done a lot of great work, but we have a lot of things that we need to keep working on. And so I just want to thank you for raising your voice tonight about the issues that are most important to you.
Hello again, I'm your chair, Darden Rice, and I'd like to thank everyone again for being here. And I just want to respond to a few of the comments that we heard tonight. I'd like to thank our sanitation union workers who came out tonight. Thank you for coming here with a solution too. We heard loud and clear the issues with the surveillance cameras in the trucks, but thank you for being here to offer a solution, which is to look at some safety and training programs that we could opt in instead, and I think that's something important to look at. There were a number of speakers who spoke about the quality of our roads, how we're fixing our roads. We heard about education, and specifically in the ways that the city can help support pre-K programs in terms of what we're doing with our libraries and our recreation centers. And all of those comments about the roads, the recreation centers, the libraries, it really compels me to really emphasize to you how important it is that we pass Penny for Pinellas in November. That will be on the ballot. If we Penny for Pinellas to St. Petersburg, that means about $25 million a year over 10 years. It's a big part of our capital improvement budget. If we don't pass Penny for Pinellas, the budget hearings that we have next year will be a very different conversation and not one that I want to have. So please, let's get out and support this because it's an important way to support the capital needs of our city, which, by the way, with the previous Penny for Pinellas rounds has helped us pave over 600 miles of St. Petersburg streets. It's helped us rebuild and fix and repair 8 recreation centers. And I could go down the whole list, but there's some Penny for Pinellas information for you right over there. And I just can't stress enough how important it is. And lastly, I was really intrigued by what a number of our speakers spoke about when I heard them refer to wanting to see transformational change for the South Side, not just incremental change. And I'd like to continue to have that conversation. It's not an easy one, because transformational change means change in the individual, it means changing in the system, it means change not just for the short term, but something that's positive, that's lasting. Now, I happen to be a strong supporter and proud of the accomplishment of creating the Southside CRA with Mayor Kreisman and Deputy Mayor Tomlin and my colleagues here on City Council. And if it's not good enough, if we don't have the vision to figure out what that CRA is going to mean for the future, then let's have those conversations. I want to have those conversations. And it sounds like you do too, so I think we're on a good ground to continue working together. Thank you for being here tonight, and we're going to be here for more questions afterwards, one-on-one, when this wraps up. So thank you very much.
So I'll wrap up, but first off, thanking you all for being here again. I know we all have said that, but it's really important. There's a role for government, but there's a role for the community, and one can't do it alone. The community can't do it by itself, government can't do it by itself, but together we all can accomplish great things. And so I really appreciate you all being here. I too heard a lot of discussions tonight about affordable housing, which is something we are very focused on. We understand the concerns. We hear them every day, and it is something we're looking at and trying to figure out the solutions. Early childhood learning, we have included funding in this budget because we recognize the importance. As I said right from the beginning, we may not be able to fund things at quite the levels we want, but we have to start. And so this budget does do that. Education, a couple of the council members talked a little bit about this. We all recognize the importance of it, and we are limited to some degree in our impact and what we can do because we don't control the school system. But that doesn't mean that each one of us on council and in administration isn't focused on being a partner and impacting and influencing. I'm sorry? Oh, and my director of education is in the room, Leah McCrae. It doesn't mean that we aren't, thank you, go give her a hand. It doesn't mean that we aren't focused on trying to influence what happens in our classrooms to try and create an environment where teachers can teach. And we certainly need to work with Tallahassee to start funding and putting the money in public schools instead of siphoning out. Infrastructure, I'm really glad glad to hear a broad discussion tonight about infrastructure. And thank you, Darden and Council, for talking about Penny a little bit because of the importance of what we can use Penny for, and recognizing, as this Council and administration do, that we have to spend the Penny money differently than we have in the past, with a greater focus on infrastructure, as we're doing with this budget, recognizing that, you know, aside from the $305 million we're committed over the next 5 years to spending on our sewer systems, we have stormwater we have to address. We have roads we have to address. We have sidewalks and bridges and seawalls and buildings that are aging. You know, and this is something that government historically has not done a great job in, not just in this city, but across cities all over the United States and the state of Florida. They're not spending money on infrastructure. And at some point in time, you got to pay the piper, and it's coming due. And we recognize that. And lastly, I'll mention about sustainability. To me, and I'm glad to hear some discussion about this tonight, focusing on sustainability, which this council and administration are committed to doing, isn't just, though, about our environment or about climate change or about resiliency, but it also includes sustainability when it comes to being healthy. It includes sustainability for economics. And if we're going to try and grow and reduce poverty and grow job opportunities and wages, it has to be done in a sustainable manner, where we're not just spending money on something and a year or two later it collapses, and we're looking at trying to see how we fix that. We have to do things when it comes to economics and job growth that are sustainable for the long term. And so I appreciate, again, you all coming out and sharing your thoughts and ideas with us. Thank you all so much.